Woohoo! Welcome back, snow lovers, to the week where Mother Nature finally delivered the goods to large swathes of the northern and western Alps, including many areas which have previously been starved of snow so far this season. Over a 3 or 4 day period, from Wednesday night through to Sunday morning, many areas received up to a metre of snow at altitude. Indeed, some areas received up to 1.5 metres of snow. Now, contrary to what some of the social media hype will have you believe, this was not the storm of the season. Prato Nervoso had 2 to 3 metres of snow over the Christmas period, but even so, it still gave some absolutely exceptional skiing conditions. With Sunday in particular being a day for the ages. Perfect bluebird skies, not a breath of wind, and cold, dry, fluffy powder snow absolutely everywhere. Aided by the fact that the previous 2 to 3 days had largely been stormbound in a lot of ski areas, which meant that finally on Sunday, when everyone was able to get up there was acres and acres of fresh powder to be had. So, people were smiling from ear to ear. Down at the lower valley levels, we had a bit of a messy mix of rain, sleet and snow throughout the whole storm period. So snowfall totals vary quite wildly from one valley to the next depending on just how much snow they had versus how much rain they had. But overall, generally speaking, by the end of the storm, many lower elevations had received around 20 to 30 centimetres of snow at about 1,000 metres, and there was even several inches down in the lower plains. The greatest snowfall totals were to be found in Savoie and Haute-Savoie in France, the likes of the Three Valleys and the Plan les Arcs in the Tarentaise, and the region around Mont Blanc such as Saint-Gervais and the Contamine. Neighbouring Aosta and the Swiss valleys also received their fair share of the snowfalls too. Further south in Italy and the Via Latia received around 20 centimetres of snow, but little of any snow made it much further south into the Alps Maritime and the Prato Nervoso region of Italian Piemonte. Further east, and parts of northern Switzerland and Austria also received their fair share of snowfall, with the region around Zell receiving around 30 to 50 centimetres of snow depending on the altitude. But, once again, unfortunately for the region which is about to be hosting the Winter Olympics very shortly, Dolomites received little if any meaningful snowfall. So it really is becoming desperate times for that portion of the Alps ahead of the flagship winter sports global event, which is due very shortly. Of course, with the cold temperatures that we did receive recently, they have been able to make mountains and mountains of man-made snow, so events will go ahead, but it is very depressing they're going to have to rely so much on man-made snow. It's really not a very sustainable future for the sport that we love, and the Olympics Committee are going to have to start to think long and hard about the future of this sporting event and how it proceeds going on into the future, because fewer and fewer places around the world are going to be able to offer reliable snowfall at this time of year to therefore be able to host the Winter Olympics moving forward. The peak of the snowfall event coincided with a weekend, which was of course great news for those who operate on a 9 to 5 existence, but not so great for those of us who are ski bums and had to share our mountains with the hordes from the towns and cities. So it seemed like virtually everybody from the likes of Geneva, Lyon, Grenoble and all the other major towns and cities which fringe the northern and western parts of the Alps flocked up to the mountains on Saturday and Sunday, particularly on Sunday. And of course, who can blame them? But this did of course lead to some exceptionally long queues, even in resorts which are traditionally quite quiet at this time of year. And then of course, getting down from the mountains again at the end of the day on Sunday was an absolute nightmare. A friend of mine spent at least 4 hours sitting in traffic trying to get down from Val Thorens in the Three Valleys, and that wasn't a situation which was unique to the Three Valleys. It was busy absolutely everywhere. We really did have to make the most of Sunday, because come Monday the winds came, then Tuesday the heat came. So now, well yes, you can still find some pockets of nice dry fresh powder in very sheltered north-facing areas. A lot of the snow has transformed now. It has been either reworked by the wind or has a sun crust. So, unfortunately, as is all too often the case these days, epic snowfall was very rapidly followed by conditions which unfortunately led to deterioration of the snowpack. By Tuesday afternoon, freezing levels were widely up above 2,500 metres in much of the northern and western Alps. And while yes, there is still lying snow down to the valleys and the plains in a lot of places, especially on northern facing and sheltered spots, even up at altitude now, in the shade, the snowpack has transformed. At best it's become very buttery, at worst it's become heavy and slushy. So to get the best of the snow conditions, you really had to be up and out on the Sunday, along with every man and his dog. Of course, on-piste conditions are broadly now fantastic in the regions which received the most snowfall, with the fresh snowfall now being well groomed into the old hard frozen base. Indeed, areas where there was previously no base, there is now a base again. So we are now back at square one as it were. We have got our base that we had back in November. And of course, with very quiet slopes, particularly midweek at this time of year, the pistes are holding up absolutely immaculately at all levels. They're seeing very little traffic at the moment, so you can still find lovely corduroy throughout the day. And of course, you can still find some nice powder in the off-piste if you go high enough and you know where to look. but it is becoming fewer and further between with the combination of the wind and the sun. Of course, with the snowfall came the heightened avalanche risk, and it's sad but perhaps not surprising that there are at least 6 fatalities in Savoie and Haute-Savoie in France alone over the weekend, people killed by avalanches, and dozens of people who were either injured or had very lucky escapes from avalanches. There have also been a number of avalanche deaths from the Pyrenees and right across the Alps in Switzerland and Austria as well over the last 4 or 5 days. But not only that, but I've heard word of people freezing to death, having gotten lost or stuck in the woods and being left there overnight and not being found till the next day. So all in all, it's been a pretty tragic period to coincide with the absolutely amazing skiing conditions. Now, nobody likes to talk ill of the dead, but avalanches are never an accident. Somebody is almost always at fault in an avalanche, and unfortunately it is usually the victim. So we need to have a bit of a cultural shift away from referring to avalanches as accidents and acknowledging them for what they are. Unfortunately, people going out, being stupid and getting themselves killed. So the only way that we're going to start saving lives is we acknowledge the fact that people are making bad decisions and it is their fault when things go wrong. The official avalanche risk across the entirety of Savoie and Haute-Savoie in France was 4 out of 5, considerable. Large skier-triggered avalanches will occur. And yet, in spite of this, people were still skiing over wind-loaded convex slopes into terrain traps, with or without equipment. Yet again, the bulk of the people who were affected by avalanches during this period had the correct equipment, but that equipment is not going to save your life if you're buried 4 or 5 metres down in the bottom of a ravine in a terrain trap. The first comment you'll always see when people are reporting avalanche incidences is everybody make sure you're carrying the correct equipment, you have your avalanche transceiver, probe and shovel. But no, for me, I would much rather nobody carried any of that equipment and nobody made silly mistakes. Of course, in an ideal world, everybody would carry the equipment and nobody will make stupid mistakes, but that just doesn't seem to be possible to happen. People think that the correct equipment makes them invincible, and it really does not. Much of the ski industry has a vested interest in trying to sell you the most expensive safety equipment possible, but in reality, the thing which is going to save your life the most is absolutely free. It is your decision making. And you don't need to be a snow scientist or avalanche geek to be able to avoid getting avalanched. The bare fundamentals of it are exceptionally simple. If there's been a lot of snow and a lot of wind, avoid steep terrain with convex slopes and terrain traps. It's as simple as that. You can still have some fun in the powder, on mellower terrain and with safe runouts. But everybody wants to be a hero on a powder day. Everyone wants to send that line, send that shoot, do that drop. And unfortunately, we see this every year. Many people die after every major snowstorm. So remember this next time we get a big snowfall. No line, no amount of powder is worth your life. And just because there are already tracks into a sector and onto a face, does not mean that it is safe and that it is stable. It is often not the first or second person to drop who releases the snow. It might be the 4th, 5th, 6th. So just because other people are taking a chance in their life doesn't mean that you should. So condolences to anybody who's been affected by an avalanche, now or ever, but we as a community need to acknowledge that we are the problem. Nobody else is to blame but ourselves. And if you can't learn from your own mistakes, then learn from somebody else's. It's all too common to see pro skiers or boarders and influencers posting videos of themselves getting avalanched with comments along the lines of, "Thank God I have my equipment with me today," or "Thank God my buddies were looking out for me." But the first thing they should be saying is, "Today I was an idiot, don't do what I did." That is what we need to see in the industry a lot more of. People acknowledging their mistakes, rather than people just simply glorifying their actions and making the same mistakes over and over again. Moving on, and for now temperatures remain slightly above average throughout most of the Alps, but they will be falling throughout the week towards around about average. But conditions overhead will remain largely dry, fine and sunny. And then into the next weekend, storms over the Mediterranean will establish a retour d'est scenario once again, which will lead to yet more substantial snowfall for the southern and southwestern Alps in particular, so likes of Piemonte and the Alps Maritime, and up towards Aosta. The details are still yet to be pinned down, but for now at least it looks like from Friday night through to at least Tuesday, the southern Alps, and in particular on the eastern margin, will see almost constant precipitation. Prato Novoso and Limone Piemonte yet again being right in the firing line, and they could well see in excess of 1.5 metres, 2 metres, perhaps more of snow over the next 4, 5, 6 days. Some forecasts are also predicting significant snowfalls up as far as the Via Lattea and into Aosta, but others not so much. But certainly everybody on the eastern margin of the southern and western Alps will be seeing some meaningful snowfall over the weekend and into the start of next week. But, as is often the case with a retour d'est scenario, little if any of this snow will make it over the main Alpine barrier onto the northern and western flanks of the Alps. So it looks like here in the Chamonix region we had our turn last weekend, it's now the turn of the southern and eastern Alps this weekend. But unfortunately, yet again, the Dolomites look set to miss out on any meaningful snowfall, with only a few centimetres at most here and there predicted at the moment. Of course, this can all change, and people will be keeping a close eye on this, but for now at least, it still looks like the Dolomites are going to remain very, very dry and very, very lean. There are indications of some much, much colder weather returning towards the latter part of next week and onwards into the final week of January, but of course that's a long, long way off and could completely change by that point. But for now at least, broadly speaking, temperatures are remaining at about average across most of the Alps into next week. Moving on to some snow-based depths, we have now seen some change since last time I brought it up. And in the east, in Kranjski Gora in Slovenia, they have an upper base of 40 centimetres, a lower base of 30 centimetres, and they have seen a number of snowfall periods over the recent weeks, with around 7 centimetres falling on the 6th of January, and 5 centimetres on the 9th of January. Cortina in the Dolomites, which is of course one of the host resorts for the Winter Olympics, have got a lower base of 10 centimetres and an upper base of 50 centimetres, but you can expect that much of this is on man-made snow, as they have of course received very little natural snow so far this season. Their last measurable snowfall total was only 6 centimetres on Christmas Eve. Since then, they've only received a few flurries. Things have improved a lot for Zell am See and the surrounding area in the heart of Austria since last time you heard. They now have around 15 centimetres of natural snowfall down at resort level and 75 centimetres up at the top of the mountain, the Smittenhoe. And then over on the Kitzsteinhorn Glacier, they've now got 90 centimetres up on the glacier and 95 centimetres slightly lower down on the Maisgogel ski area. And they've received plenty of frequent snowfalls recently, with around 6 centimetres a couple of days ago, but around 30 to 50 centimetres in total throughout this last period of snowfall. Moving on to Switzerland, and Davos have a lower base depth of 33 centimetres and an upper base of 92 centimetres. And again, they received some fairly decent snowfall over this previous weekend, with around 30 to 40 centimetres of fresh snow falling over that 4-day period. Further west, in Verbier, and they have an upper base depth of 180 centimetres and a lower base depth of 45 centimetres. And they received some pretty big snowfall totals over this previous weekend, with between 80 centimetres and a metre of snow falling up on the mountain. South of the border, and Pila in Aosta officially have 30 centimetres of snow on their upper mountain and 20 centimetres on the lower mountain, although that does feel quite conservative as they received around 30 to 40 centimetres of snow during this previous snowfall event, so those numbers may well be out of date. Salzi in the Via Latia officially have 25 centimetres on their lower slopes and 50 centimetres on their upper slopes, and they received around 15 to 20 centimetres over the previous storm, but they're definitely in a situation now where they could do a little bit more. Conditions there are quite good, but they are starting to see a few rocks and clumps of mud and dirt and so on poking through in some high wear areas on their pistes. Over in the Plan, and currently conditions are pretty great. Officially they're reporting an upper base of 188 centimetres and a lower base of 65 centimetres, but they received around about 1.5 metres of snow over this previous storm period, so both on and off piste there, conditions are pretty excellent right now. And down in the far southwest, Prato Novoso have still got over 180 centimetres on their upper mountain and 120 centimetres on the lower mountain, and that's down at 1500 metres above sea level. So that's still a great depth to snow at such a low elevation. They haven't received any meaningful snow since the Christmas period. They missed out completely on this last storm, but on the whole conditions there are still great, especially on piste. And of course they're set to see a hell of a lot more over the coming weekend as well. So that's a brief roundup of the snow depths. On balance, we are now much, much closer to average for what we should be for this time of year in terms of snowfall across a larger section of the Alps. Down in the far southwest, in the Alps Maritime and Piemonte, they are of course still well above average in terms of their snowfall depths. And in the northern and western Alps, we have now caught up. We are now pretty much bang on average with where we should be for this time of year. Further east and north of the Alpine Divide, they have also now caught up and they're getting close to average for where they should be for this time of year. But south into the Dolomites and into the Italian Alps, they are still incredibly dry. It is very, very lean at this time of year. They are well below where they should be for mid to late January. So in summary, it's been a pretty good week for a lot of people, and for some of those who missed out further south, they've got plenty to be excited about for this coming weekend and into next week. But other parts of the Alps, the Dolomites, further east and south, still need a lot more snow. So plenty of places are not out of the woods yet. And for those of us who do now have snow, we would of course very much welcome more. We've got our base back now, which means the next time we get a good snowfall, it'll be even better. Whereas this time around, we're basically skiing, we're out of base again. So we're kind of back to square one. We're where we should be, but we would definitely still like a lot more. So please keep doing your snow dances. especially for those further east and south, but even for here, we definitely appreciate more snow as well. So keep praying to weather gods, keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully the rest of this season doesn't disappoint. But for now, if you have the snow, then get out there and enjoy it, but enjoy it safely. Make sure that you can always enjoy it tomorrow. So pay attention to the warnings, listen to the official advice, and keep it safe. As always, thanks to the guys and gals at Salzy Online and also at Snow Camps Europe. If you want a more detailed snow forecast for the Via Latia region, then go check out the Salzy Online, their snow reports. And if you're interested in the Zellamsee and Caprin area in Austria, then go check out Snow Camps Europe. And go give their channels some love as well. And of course, you'll all be hearing from me next week. Till then.
Ouais. Ouais, en fait, c'est une marque naisselienne qui a pas trop marché, donc en fait, il y a des déstockage.
Mais non, en vrai, je regarde alors.
C'est
quoi, elle a pas marché?
Bah, tu sais, c'est chaud dans cette marque.
Bah ouais, comme
Donc, ils ont créé du stock.
peut-être que c'est
C'est imperméable à... C'est quand même bien imperméable. C'est peut-être pas 25 000, mais c'est peut-être 20 000, je sais plus quoi là.